Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Bundesliga Show, brought to you by Over the Bar. We're checking in for some Bundesliga review of match week 14. So sit back, relax, and enjoy with us. Before we get cracking, Mark, how are you doing? You must be rushed off your feet. You've done about 5 shows in the last few days. How
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it seems like I'm never away. Like a show a day keeps the doctor away, as they say. Yeah, but it's all going good. Yeah, just really busy, as you say. Nuremberg Christmas market's on as well, so it seems like the whole of Europe has descended upon Nuremberg at the moment. I don't know if you know, guys, but Nuremberg actually has the oldest and most traditional Christmas markets in Germany as well. So it's really famous, really a big tourist resort at the moment in Nuremberg. But yeah. Weather's not too good, but yeah, looking forward to getting into some Bundesliga action today.
Yeah, absolutely. So much to talk about. So what we'll be doing tonight, featured for, we're going to be bringing back our hero of the week. So obviously we've been doing the poll on Twitter. So we're looking forward to seeing the results of that. We'll announce that at the end of the show. So much to reflect on. So looking forward to getting into it. Obviously, before we do crack on, let's have obviously a thumbs up for the show and the continued hordes of shows that we're doing. Many watch-alongs. Obviously, great fun you and Peter had doing the Pokal and, of course, the game yesterday. Predictions, fantasy football. It's non-stop. So please give us a thumbs up for the great efforts that Mark particularly has been going to in recent weeks. Obviously, comment along if you've got any questions for tonight's show, if you've got any thoughts about our featured 4, or indeed who's going to win the hero of the week. Looking forward to that. And of course, press the red button, subscribe, keep pushing us up and up. That'd be fantastic. A big shout out to our partners, as per usual, Bundesliga Boxes and Bully News. Speaking of fantasy football, it's been a disaster of a weekend for me, fantasy football-wise. I went hard on Bayern players. I brought in Musiala and starred him. My Lord, what a terrible mistake that was. Be some interesting fantasy football scores. I think I've gone down dramatically in our league. I was hovering around the 160 mark, which is actually sounds worse than it actually is because I've been doing really well overall. Mark, I dread to think how you're doing.
Yeah, actually, I just checked now, and last week was a really, really good week for me. I got 150 points, actually, incredibly. I mean, my team at the minute is a kind of mixture between Leverkusen and Leipzig, basically, and Harry Kane. Obviously, Kane didn't do very well, but I actually had Wirtz, Simmons, Furyk, and Honorat, who all scored well this week. And then in the defence, I had Raum, Grimaldo, Weiser, and even Frimpong got a good score as well. So pretty much the only one that let me down this weekend really was Harry Kane, who only ended up getting 5 points, and I got 8 on him because of the captaincy. But it was a really good week for me. But overall, actually, where are you, Rory, in the fantasy football? Overall, I'm 1,000. I'm 9,703rd at the minute.
Is that what we're talking in the world? Are we talking?
Yeah, in the world. I think, yeah.
Okay, I will check. So in the world, I've dropped down a lot. I was in the top 3,000, but I'm now down to 4,145.
You're still doing well, though, really.
Yeah. So yeah, overall not too bad. It was a really bad
points. How many points are you on?
Oh, good question. I am on points 1,971.
Yeah, so you're about 120 ahead of me. It's not that much considering the places. It's just like 1 week score. But I had a couple of bad weeks. I think my 12 and 13 were really bad. But this week was actually really good in the end. So quite happy with that.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, looking forward to it. Well, it will be the last fantasy show that we do before Christmas, actually, with Bruno this week. We're looking forward to that because obviously we'll double up because we've got the English midweek games that will finish us off a week midweek, if you catch my drift, if I'm putting that right anyway. Alas, we'll crack on with the show and start off with our featured 4. Again, very quickly before I do, I was just kind of going through some of our statistics from the podcast particularly, and looking at the most recent episode and how many people have listened to it and the spread in terms of countries, and it's just so humbling and so nice to see that how far across people are listening and watching us. So fantastic support wherever you're listening from. We absolutely love it that we can chat Bundesliga with you all. So yeah, let's keep it up and let's start chatting Bundesliga. So our fourth game, starting with tonight, is Union Berlin 3, Borussia Mönchengladbach 1. Mark, after Union got themselves a draw the week previous, they finally got themselves that big W to get them back in working order. And obviously started off with that Kevin Volland penalty, preceding goals from Hollerbach and Kaufmann. Both second and third goals were particularly well taken and great strikes, actually. A player single goal for Gladbach couldn't spark much of a comeback for Gladbach, who have been full of plenty of goals. And, we've been talking a lot about Gladbach, Mark, in previous shows. And we haven't talked about Union because they've been struggling so much and they haven't featured so much in a positive sense on our show for a long time. But I think it's now time that we can give Union their due credit and really give them a bit of a thumbs up, because that performance was exactly what they needed. They're now out of the relegation zone. What were your thoughts on this game? Did you feel like it was coming? We've seen some different goal scorers there, particularly for Union. Is it a change of approach, personnel-wise? What do you think that you've seen that's brought about this mini run of 2 games unbeaten in the Bundesliga for Union now?
Yeah, it's the first win in all competitions since the end of August, incredibly. So I think it was about 3.5 months in all competitions in between wins. So it was incredible. The last time they won a game was a 4-1 win in Darmstadt when it was still 35 degrees here in the Bundesrepublik. So I think that just about says everything. I'm pretty sure it would have been well below zero on Saturday for that game in the east part of Berlin. But yeah, they were just amazing in the game, to be honest. Like, special performances from that man Hollerbach. He'd not done very much at all before, but I thought he was the man of the match. He was superb. Some of the long raking balls he was playing were absolutely brilliant in the game, and got a good strike for the second goal as well. Kevin Volland as well has finally turned up in the Bundesliga again, 3.5 months late by the look of it, but he was great in the game. He's not impressed at all since joining from Monaco in the summer, but this was his first good performance, and he's the kind of guy that needs to stand up now, because he is a good player. He's a German international. He always did well wherever he'd been before he came to Union, and it's great to see that he seems to have got his form back. Another one that played well, I thought, was Roussillon as well. We've not seen that much of him this season, but he's always been a player that I like. Roussillon, the left back, obviously signed from Wolfsburg last season. We've not seen that much of those kind of old school guys this season, have we? So maybe it is a case of back to basics for Union. I like the fact that they went with the midfield pivot of Haberer and Khedira as well. Yeah. There were no signs of, the likes of Aronson, who's just not done anything at all, really. Some of the other new Toussaint, who's not impressed at all in that midfield either. I think they did go back to basics. That was the kind of core of the team from last year. Diogo Leite started, Knocker started, Juranovic. So aside from Gosens and Volland, really, it was like the team from last season. So It was definitely a case of back to basics. And, Kevin Behrens is still not really at it at the minute after that great start to the season of 4 goals in his first 2 games. Has he even scored since then? I'm not sure, to be honest. But yeah, his season has well and truly gone to the dogs since he cycled home after the Mainz game. But yeah, I think overall it was old school Union. They played a very wide game. The fight was back. The passion from the fans, which never really went away, did it? Which was fantastic to see. But Bielitsa, he's got off to a good start. I thought they played quite well against Augsburg in his first game, and then I thought they were very good in this game, and they just outclassed Gladbach. This for me was an Union Berlin performance of the last 3 seasons, even 4 seasons, really. And things look bright for them. As you say, they got lucky with other results. They're actually out of the bottom 3, incredibly, from bottom, climbing 3 places. And that table looks a lot prettier for them now. They go away to Bochum next weekend, and, they'll quite fancy back-to-back wins. If they can repeat this kind of performance, I wouldn't be surprised to see them win again next week.
Yeah, and then follow that up, final game before Christmas at home to Köln, which again is the way that Morris has already put in the comments. Actually, no need to mention a certain team's performance on Sunday. I watched that from start to finish, and my God, I think most people should be given an award for getting through that one. But anyway, nonetheless, it's probably not going to appear on the featured for tonight, unfortunately, Moritz. But yeah, interesting stuff. From an Union perspective. But yeah, I mean, just scoring goals again as well, Mark. Previous, obviously, to last week, they'd gone 4 games without even scoring a solitary goal. We've mentioned Vollen, we mentioned Behrens, obviously, Geraldo Becker not being, a lot of pressure on him, and players that have come and gone, obviously, in an Union shirt. So there's a lot of pressure on these players, particularly Vollen, to have hit the ground running, which obviously they haven't done. And, if they can be backed up by these wider players, Hollerbach, as you mentioned, had a really good game. So, yeah, if they can push that forwards, there's absolutely no reason why they can't get 6 points from the next 6 points. And then they're sitting a lot prettier before the Christmas break. And, the new manager, as you mentioned, Mark, has done a good job of getting them back to basics, getting that wide play again. As you mentioned, that double pivot, having Rani Khedira back is such a big thing for them as well. He's been sorely missed from an injury perspective. Having him back is great. And yeah, some of those newer signings that haven't bedded in well have seemingly been put back to the bench. And I know you talked about some of them even being potentially released in January. We'll have to see what happens with that and what they may be doing in the January market as well. But yeah, so happy to see them back to winning ways. It's been really hard for, obviously, us as supporters of Union in terms of their great journey that they've just dropped off a cliff so much. And, it's obviously cost Urs Fischer his job. But yeah, great stuff for Union. Just briefly with Gladbach, Mark, it's just one of those where they just don't turn up, rocking up to into Berlin, knowing how much Union wanted to win it. Again, it's probably just a pure fact of they didn't want it enough. And despite, their improvements, those are the sort of games that they easily get turned over in for me.
Yeah, they should have been better in the game. And I think they probably underestimated Union a little bit because, I think they've been so poor at home. It seems so weird to say that about Union, They'd only had 1 win in the 6 home games before this. Actually, 6 home games before this. And if you include the Champions League, they didn't win any of the home games in that either. So I think it was just a case of them being underestimated. I think Playa will be happy to be on the score sheet again. He's really put in some good form together. But in general, they got well outplayed. And I think the XG actually came up trumps in this game. It said it should have been 3-1 to Union, which it was. So they were well worthy of the win and created a lot of chances, and I think they even had another couple disallowed as well in the game. So, yeah, I think Gladbach, it's frustrating for them because despite the good run, they're still not in that good of a position in the league. They're currently 10th place, but they're only a few points above the likes of Heidenheim and Werder Bremen. So there's still work to do for them. Obviously, they go away to Saarbrücken as well in the Cup, which is, wow, that's a great tie. Because, no, I'm not sure that anyone will fancy them to go there and win, to be honest, because the way they've been, Saarbrücken just seems to be having one of those years in the Cup. It reminds me of my team in England, Wigan Athletic, when they've turned teams over as well, from the 3rd division, the 2nd division. And we'll just have to see, won't we? But that is a banana skin for sure.
Yeah, absolutely is. Gladbach still very much struggling, particularly on the road. They haven't won since September away from home. Right, our 3rd place match was the Battle of the New Boys, and this produced the goods very much so, Mark. A massive 3-2 home win for Heidenheim, taking the spoils and obviously producing a really important result for them based on what happened as well at the weekend. It was always going to be massive for whoever won this one. And this was a really topsy-turvy match, though. And I think, obviously, we got most of the goals in the second half, but the first half was really end-to-end, I think. And, there were chances, all over the place for both sides, both goalkeepers in, having to be in good form to keep away as many goals as they did, Schuen and Muller. But eventually, the home side took a lead. Again, the supplier, as per usual for Heidenheim, is Bester. So obviously a deep free kick, whipped it in. And it's really nicely flicked on by Schoppner, the midfielder. So it was a great way for them to end the first half and take control of the match. But then the game was turned on its head in that sense, because into the second half, just a bit of a hopeful long ball forward was controlled by former Heidenheim man Skarke, who's obviously been one of the main points of attack for Darmstadt this season. Brought it down out of the air perfectly, held off his man and shot past the goalkeeper for 1-1. And then shortly after, his cross is put into his own net by Maloney, which was not the greatest bit of defending you'll ever see. I guess you could say he was slightly unsighted by the players jumping in front of him. So all of a sudden, Darmstadt are onto a winner and a 2-1 up away from home, and on about 60 odd minutes. So they had 30 minutes to see out. But this Heidenheim team at home, Mark, they're so dangerous. I mean, I've seen them live a few times, as in watched them live, and they're so dangerous from set pieces. And that man, the captain, Meinke, who has come in for a bit of stick on this show, gets himself a brace in as many minutes to start the comeback and finish the comeback, obviously giving his side a 2-2 and then a 3-2 lead, both from corners. One was a from post flick, I think, and then another was more of a powerful header. What did you make of this game? It was just one of those ones where, it was kind of, we'll try and outscore you sort of a game. Both defenses were looking quite vulnerable, but Heidenheim making the difference in regards to those, those key set pieces, which, can sometimes make or break a season if they're, particularly powerful weapon for you.
Yeah, I thought it was a brilliant game. Not necessarily from a technical viewpoint, because a lot of the goals probably should have been avoided, but it was great fun to watch, wasn't it? On a freezing cold afternoon in Heidenheim in South Germany. And yeah, I mean, both teams knew they needed to win this game. It's as simple as that. I think that's one of the reasons why it ended up being so open, because I think both managers realized we need 3 points from this game, even though Darmstadt were away from home. They've not won in a good while now, I think since September, and it's starting to look a little bit bleak for them. Despite that good comeback at the early stages of the second half, things were looking good for them at that point. But they dropped away quite poorly in the end. And I thought Heidenheim battered them really in that last probably 25, 30 minutes and deserved the win in the end. I think, Meinke, I think I gave him a bit of stick just last week, actually, on the show with Emma. And actually, he did really well in this game. I mean, the two headers were classic set like Heidenheim, really. But normally it's Kleindienst on the end of them or Pieringer. But obviously, in this case, it was Meinke on the end of both of them, which was great to see from their perspective. As you say, from corners, they are just beasts. But the weird thing is, they score loads from corners, but they concede loads as well. So it's like, you'd normally imagine if you're a good team off corners, you'd be able to defend them as well. But they can't, basically. It's just basically a corner's like a penalty in matches involving Heidenheim at the moment. It's just every game there's at least 2 goals involving corners, either for them or against them. But yeah, one thing I would say I'm a little bit worried about is the form of Kleindienst at the minute. I mean, he's a player that I've credited a lot, but he missed a few chances in that first half as well, and he missed a few against Bochum as well. And they need him to get back on the score sheet because he is a good striker. And I actually don't think Heidenheim are playing as well as they were in the early part of the season. I think They were probably a little bit lucky to win this one in truth, but it was still a big win for them. I think they need to, get Bester, despite having a really good game in this match. This was his best match for probably a month or so, I would say. Kleindienst has started missing chances, and as has Pieringer as well. Like, he missed a few at the end of the game as well. So they do need to start taking more chances from open play. That's for sure. I think defensively, they're not the best team in the world. I thought Traore was pretty poor in the game, in truth. The right back, he struggled in the match. I think Mainker, he's all heart and grit, but he does make errors, and he doesn't seem to have much pace at all at the back. But obviously, he is a threat at the other end, which is important. He won them the game. So, as for Darmstadt, I think this is the first time since week 4 that they've been propping up the table when they got those back-to-back wins. I remember that, I think it was September, they had the really good month. They got 7 points from 3 games. And aside from that, they've only taken 2 the whole season. So, I think we all had them down to get relegated. And I think, the fact that they're propping up the league now is concerning. They've got Wolfsburg and Heidenheim before the break. Wolfsburg, potentially they could get something out of that, but you wouldn't fancy them to get anything off Hoffenheim. Sorry, not Heidenheim, Hoffenheim. But it is looking a bit bleak for them. They've just got to keep fighting. Skarka has a goal or 2 in him. I quite like him. I think they've got a few other good players too, like Wilhelmsen puts himself about, but he doesn't really get the goals. Holland is quite a good player. Kempe, I remember he was a star when they had that really good run, Kempe, in September. Pfeiffer, I think he is going for the record of the most Bundesliga games without a goal, really, because he must be on like close to 40 Bundesliga games without a goal, and he's a striker. So it's just, Rory, you know a lot about him from his Stuttgart days when he just couldn't hit a barn door with a banjo, and you'd have thought he would have got the odd goal for Darmstadt, considering he's probably the most high-profile forward, but he's just not done it again, has he? So they don't have the goals. Defensively, they give mistakes away. So I think, they are going to get relegated, unfortunately, for them.
Yeah, tough times at the moment for Darmstadt. From Pfeiffer's point of view, he doesn't look like he's going to score a goal. When he came into the team at the start, he was that kind of target man that they could use, and I think he got a few assists early on. But he has struggled since then. Like you mentioned, Skarka up front. They're missing Melem as well. So, he was one of their better attacking threats. Honsak as well. Early doors, I thought he was going to be like one of their better players. Obviously, he came off the bench, but wasn't able to do anything. Interesting stuff. The big thing for both teams is going to be their home form. Heidenheim have won 13 of their 14 points at home. So again, they obviously goes to show that how important that, that kind of siege mentality is. When you're at home, you have to take your points. That's what Heidenheim have done so far. They're a hard team to beat there. Much like Darmstadt need to repeat that as well. Good stuff. We shall move on as we are time bound tonight for our second game of the evening, and it's going to cover BVB versus RB. Big matchup on Saturday night. Saw them face off. At the moment, the battle for 4th place, it seems, but obviously a really entertaining game. And I might as well get the earmuffs on ready for this, Mark, because I presume you're going to go hard in on Mats Hummels straight away.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, it was just one of them again. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's quite funny. When I was watching it, I actually started laughing, to be honest, because I thought it was just so, for me, if there was one moment that summed up Mats Hummels since he went back to Dortmund, that was it. Basically, like clumsily running back, and he knows he's not going to get there, so he just hacks him down before he gets in the penalty area. And the referee initially gives the penalty and the yellow card for that, because in Germany they still have the single punishment. They don't have the red card and penalty. But then obviously it goes to VAR, and it's correctly ruled out as the opposite way. So it's a free kick and a red card. So what actually went down as being better, I'm not sure there for Dortmund, because you probably go 1-0 down, but you've still got 11 men on the pitch. But then obviously they had to play basically 75 minutes with 10 men. So that was always going to be hard against a Leipzig team who are very, very good going forward and create a lot of chances. And obviously they did end up taking them, didn't they? Yeah. For the game itself, I mean, I thought it was a real good watch, to be honest. It didn't disappoint, this one at all. To be honest, the first half an hour was quite boring, actually. I think, obviously, Leipzig had a few chances, but then once the first goal went in, the kind of pitiful own goal, really. It was quite a poor own goal, really, from Benzabaini. I mean, if he's an attacking header, it's a great goal, isn't it? But, he just kind of... He's had a poor start to his season, actually, really, at Dortmund. I don't think he's been good, Benzabaini, at all, really. I mean, obviously, he's probably their best fullback as well, which is a bit worrying, really, at the minute, because we've talked a lot about their problems at fullback, but, that was awful, really, to give a goal away like that when you're already down to 10 men, too. But fair play. I mean, for me, a man who should be playing more, actually, Süle came on, and I thought he was brilliant in the game as well. He got the equaliser, good finish as well at the far post.
Yeah.
As it happened, he almost went on to equalise in the very last kick of the game too. I thought he was super. I really like Süle. At times I watch Dortmund and I'm just thinking, what's going on with Edin Terzic's lineups, to be honest. I mean, for me, I would have Süle in there every game, really. I would have him in there. I would also have Marlon in there every game. And I'd probably have Adeyemi in as well, to be honest. I think, if you look at the team he's going with at the minute, he's going with that front three of Füllkrug, Bino, Gittins and Royce. And I'm not really seeing that much from Bino, Gittins and Royce, to be honest, to justify starting every game. I would rather go... For me, if I was a defence, I'd be more worried if I saw Marlon and Adeyemi on those wings, definitely. And I just don't understand why Marlon in particular doesn't start at all. I would say it's just a poor formation in my eyes. Meunier starting this game as well. I don't know what's going on with his lineups. Rory, what do you think about that?
Some of it is obviously based on what's going on internally with the club. So, for example, Daniel Marlon, there's lots of chat about him. Quite ridiculously, he's linked with Man United in a swap deal with Jadon Sancho. That's obviously not going to happen, but there's quite a lot of whisperings that Marlon is on his way out. So he's not playing, really. Adeyemi's form has dropped. He started the season pretty well. Thoughts go back to some decent Champions League performances, particularly that he gave, and especially towards the end of last season as well. Him and Marlon were, fantastic. That's not been the case this season. And Bino Gittins has been one of their better attacking players for me. So I have no issue with Bino Gittins starting. And he was obviously the player that was sacrificed for Süle to come on. So there's not much you can do about that. Royce is a club legend and always gives everything for the shirt. Of course, his best days are behind him. So that's just a case of using Marco Reus accordingly. Terzic obviously thinks, big game, I need my big game players. So Marco Reus, Mats Hummels, players that experience start. Naturally, it backfired in the sense of Hummels. And then, RB Leipzig had license to control the game. Interestingly enough about this game, I thought RB Leipzig handled it pretty badly. Because if you look statistically at this game afterwards, which I have had a little browse, Leipzig had 44% possession despite having a man advantage. They made fewer passes and ran over 10k more than Dortmund. That's the sort of statistics you expect to see when you're a man down, not a man up. So I honestly thought that as soon as Leipzig got that early enough lead, thanks to the own goal, they handled it poorly. And then the second half, they went 2-1 up, obviously, as Baumgartner breaks with Xavi to make it 2-1. And then Paulsen, you think, makes it safe, which I have to say, Paulsen's dummy on Schlotterbeck was absolutely sensational. I did not expect him to do that. He absolutely sold him into next week to make it 3-1. But yeah, I just, Leipzig are getting through games. They're not quite performing to the same levels as they were early on this season, interestingly enough. And Yanis Blaswich actually had to perform some really good saves towards the end of the game to stop it being 3-3. As you mentioned, Süle could have equalised as well. So Dortmund would have been buzzing with the 3-3 draw. Leipzig would have been kicking themselves. As you say, after the sending off, there was a long period of Leipzig dominance, but they didn't do too much with it. They were wasteful in the final third. Raum got in behind the back loads. Henriks had great chances to score as well. For me, it was a really interesting game. Kind of the mismanagement and game management of both teams made it really exciting, actually, in that sense. Dortmund played well in parts as well, and credit to them. I think there's just a bit of at both clubs right now, they're just a little bit unsure on best teams. We've already mentioned about, why Sesko not playing as much, but, Poulsen comes off the bench and does a really good performance alongside Sesko, which I think Poulsen should be used more off the bench. Sesko should be starting. But that's by the by, because he proved his worth in that sense. Really interesting match. And obviously for both teams, well, particularly for Dortmund, they kind of get away with it this weekend. Obviously, they lose. Leverkusen and Stuttgart don't go too much further away because they only got a point each extra. And, of course, Bayern lost. So they haven't been punished for it too much. But there is that gap now, between fourth place and fifth. What are we saying? Yeah, the 4-point gap, it's not a bridge that is completely unpassable, and it can be completely cut in half in one match week. So Dortmund might even be in the top 4 come the Christmas break. But it's really interesting to see how these teams are kind of struggling their way through at the moment. And again, we've talked about how they've struggled, and they're only 2 points ahead of Hoffenheim, who have been very up and down themselves. So if we're talking about top 4, Hoffenheim in the mix. It's a weird thing to think about in that sense. But anyway, yeah, great game. Really good one to enjoy. So then, just the matter of this quiet little affair in Frankfurt, Mark, which was just 5-1 to Frankfurt against the German champions. Where to start with this one? I mean, I think we probably start with crediting Frankfurt before we go completely in on Bayern, because I'm careful of doing that, because I'm well aware that United are playing Bayern and will probably get absolutely trounced midweek. But let's start with Frankfurt. They were on the front foot. They played some really good counter-attacking football. They were clinical, and they had a real sharp edge. And I thought the midfield kind of axis again ahead of kickoff looked a little bit vulnerable, because when you kind of match up the two teams, I thought Larsson's had a pretty quiet start to his Frankfurt career, and as a young lad doesn't look hugely physical just yet, alongside Mario Götze, another slight player despite his Bundesliga experience, versus the double pivot of Goretzka and Kimmich. I thought, this doesn't line up too well. But eating my words in that sense, Mark, because Frankfurt to a man were absolutely spot on and made the most of numerous Bayern errors.
Yeah, I think for me, this match in many ways proves that tactics isn't everything in football, to be honest. Because if you looked at the lineups and tactically, you would have said it would have been 5-1 to Bayern, basically. Because as you say, that midfield, it looked impossible that they'd be able to kind of keep up with, obviously, Bayern's answer of Goretzka and Kimmich. I mean, it just looked impossible, basically, because as you say, Larsson, he's been playing a little bit further forward, and Shaqiri's been kind of holding the ground, but you were like, Goetze can't do that. Do you know what I mean? Like, Goetze can't do a Shaqiri role. So, yeah, it is a miracle, really, that they managed to pull something out of this game, and not only win it, but win it so heavily as well. So it proves that sometimes individual performance can outdo tactics as well, to be honest. Because as you say, the amount of running that this Frankfurt team did, just the effort they put into it. I mean, Petre, I thought, was superb as well. Koch is starting to come together as well now, actually, too. I think he's been a kind of unsung hero in the Bundesliga this year as well. I think Petre and Tuta, they are probably the shining lights of Frankfurt these days, to be honest. But in general, it was a superb performance, as you said. I mean, Ebimbe, who we've not talked about that much, he was actually one of their kind of marquee signings, really, in summer. They managed to get him on a permanent from PSG. And he'd not really done that much. I wasn't overly impressed with him on loan last season either, to be honest. But this was probably his best performance in a Frankfurt show. We can see more from him, maybe. Knauf came back into action. Mamouche, who I think has been about a month without a goal before this game, he ended up coming good as well and getting the finish in. And to a man, there wasn't one man on that Frankfurt pitch who played badly in the game, really. It was a superb performance. Chaibi came back into form too with some great runs and pressurising of that midfield. But yeah, we've got to start on Bayern, I suppose, haven't we? I mean, for me, Kim and Upamecano, I mean, what can you say about them? Like, Kim has kind of divided opinion a little bit. He looks good. He's such a big guy, but he's not that strong. That's my fear about him. Like, I think he was on the second goal, and he just got completely done by Chaibi, didn't he? I mean, a man that's half his size really ended up pushing him off the ball, and it was too easy, really. And Upamecano had one of those days, didn't he? Like, we've talked about this before with Upamecano, that when he's bad, he can be absolutely awful, and this was one of those days. Like, I remember, I think, was it last year against, I think it was, memory serves me right, it was against Gladbach, and I think he scored an own goal and got a red card or something. But like, he does have those, not very often, because he is a very good central defender in most cases, but when he's bad, he can be absolutely woeful. And this was one of those days. Like, he just couldn't make a tackle. He looked lightweight. His passing was poor. Oh yeah, I remember another day he played really bad was that Champions League game against Man City as well. That was one of those days as well. He is one of those players that if you put enough pressure on him, he will make mistakes playing out from the back, Upamecano. He's not the best passer out of the back for me. Yeah, I think probably a bigger worry for Bayern Munich rather than just one bad day from Kim and Upamecano. It's more like the Goretzka-Kimmich axis just... I don't know if it's as good as what it once was. You know, I'm just not sure. Kimmich, I'm genuinely worried about at the minute. Despite his amazing goal, by the way, it was a great goal. His curl finish, but his overall performances this season, for me, this has been his worst season I can ever remember from Kimmich. I really would say that much. He looks stressed on the pitch. He doesn't look like he's enjoying himself at all. He looks like he wants to play further forward, but Tuchel wants him to stay back, because Goretzka is actually the better player going forward out of those two. He wants him to be the pivot, but he doesn't seem like he wants to play that position. For me, they look better when Lima is in there, actually, ahead of... I never thought I'd be saying this, but they are better when they've got Lima in along with Goretzka this season. Most of their best performances have been that midfield. I'm a little bit worried about Kimmich at the minute. Obviously, with the Euros coming up, Germany need him to do well, and I just think... He's just not been that good. I don't know if you agree, Rory, but I just don't think he's been that good this season. I really do believe that Bayern Munich have been better and they've had the pivot of Lima and Goretzka.
Yeah, he's definitely not had his best season, I don't think. Maybe a short-term fix is putting him back to right back and putting Lima into the middle rather than making Lima a right back when Kimmich already is a right back. I mean, the fullbacks for Bayern, I know you've already mentioned Kim and Upamecano, who are both poor, but the fullbacks, well, both of them were pulled at half time, weren't they? Obviously, to bring on Lima and Guerrero. Davis obviously slips for the first goal as well. You can't do much about a slip, but his form, obviously, Runa was alluding to it actually on the fantasy show on Friday, how he's, from a fantasy aspect, he's not really done much, and his season overall's not been great. I'm sure his mind's elsewhere, Davis. I'm sure he's gunning for that Real Madrid move, to be honest, but time will tell. But did Bayern look like a team that haven't played for a few weeks, Mark? Was it just as simple as that? I mean, I'm sure we'll see a reaction midweek against Man United.
No, I don't think it was just a case they haven't played. They were just really poor and they lost to a better team. But I agree that, I think I mentioned it with Petre yesterday, that it is just a blip for me. It's absolutely not a crisis for Bayern Munich. I still think they're a very good team this season, and there's been a lot of great performances. As you say, Davis and Kimmich, the form of them two is worrying because neither of them come even close to the heights. But yeah, I think it's just a blip, in my opinion. I don't think it was a case they haven't played, because for me, that is an advantage ultimately not to play. You rest your legs, you know what I mean? It's a lot better than being overworked Like we see some teams in Europe, I think especially Newcastle United in England, they look absolutely running on fumes at the minute because they play pretty much every midweek the whole season and they just can't do it anymore. And for me, Bayern, they've had a good schedule in recent weeks. They've been able to sit at home when everyone else has been freezing whatever's off on the pitch. So for me, that's not an excuse. But I agree, Rory, I'd be very worried if I was United. I mean, obviously United need a miracle anyway, basically, because obviously they need results to go their favour as well. But I would be expecting a Bayern win at Old Trafford tomorrow night, put it that way.
Yeah, look forward to that, he says. But yeah, no, overall, like you say, they lost to a better team. Frankfurt, again, Frankfurt outran Bayern by 10k as a team overall. Just showing how much they wanted it. Bayern obviously just not at the races, errors everywhere. Oddly enough, Bayern had a higher XG than Frankfurt, but just goes to show that Frankfurt took their chances. And Bimbe, some really good finishes. Knauf as well, and obviously Larson, was put his one away brilliantly. It's the first time that Bayern have conceded 5 goals in a Bundesliga match since losing 5-1 to Frankfurt on the 2nd of November in 2019. So, well, there you go. Fans of the Eagles have been enjoying themselves against Bayern. It was a tremendous performance, it has to be said. So well done to Frankfurt. Right, just as we're closing off and just have a few minutes, just the best of the rest in terms of results. See a good Friday night and rare home win for Hoffenheim, seeing off Bochum, who obviously look in a lot of trouble at the moment, despite what has to be said, a bloody fantastic consolation goal from Paciencia on the volley, but it wasn't enough. Hoffenheim cruising and closing in on Dortmund in 5th place. Really good away win for Freiburg against Wolfsburg, as the pressure surely is really coming on to Niko Kovac. We'll see that play out quite soon. Really good home win for Werder against improving Augsburg. So many people would have had the away side to have done well there, but another goal for Dusk as Werder got home there. So important result for them. And obviously a great game on Sunday. But obviously we covered it in the watch along. Stuttgart's 1-1 draw with Leverkusen, very end to end. Great first half from Stuttgart and a good response from Leverkusen in the second half. And then Köln and Mainz played out rather forgettable 0-0 draw in the end on the Sunday evening. It's weird. The early Sunday game is always the best. The Sunday evening game is always pretty rubbish. So generally speaking, that's been the way of things so far this season. That's pretty much everything. Gavin, good evening, Gavin. Hope you're doing well. What have you got for us tonight? Any idea why Hoffmann was benched for Leverkusen? Is he likely to regain his starting place for the 2 Bundesliga matches left this month? Because he was benched for, obviously we saw Adli start in March. What were your thoughts on that? Obviously you would have covered it with Peter in fairly good detail. Just a tactical thing from Xavi.
There was quite a bit of shock, actually, about that, because a lot of people think Hoffmann's been one of the best players in the Bundesliga this season. But I think it could have been a mixture of like the form of Hoffmann in the last game against Dortmund. He didn't have his best game against Dortmund. He was hooked in that game. And I think Adli had a really good game against Paderborn in the Cup. So maybe he just thought, Adli's a really good player as well, let's be honest. So I think it might just have been a slight tweak. Yeah, but I do think we'll see him back. I don't think Adli did enough in the game to warrant starting again. And I think Hoffmann will be back for their game against Frankfurt next week. Yeah,
completely agree. And then to finish off this evening, we are bringing back a lovely little feature that we used to do back in the day, in seasons gone by, having our Hero of the Week, which our lovely partners at Bundesliga Boxes are going to be partnering up with us. So the Bundesliga Boxes Hero of the Week we're going to do at the end of most Monday shows. And what's different about it this time around is basically that you choose it. So we did a poll on X/Twitter earlier on today with 4 candidates. So Mark doesn't know the result of this. But anyway, so the candidates we had were Frankfurt / Dina Mbembe, who obviously got a great brace against Bayern in their 5-1 win. We had Mark's favourite, Patrick Meinke, for his brace of goals in 2 minutes for their obviously Heidenheim's win against Darmstadt. We have Union Berlin as a team for their first win in 11 against Gladbach. And then the fourth choice was Paciencia's consolation wonder strike against Hoffenheim, that clean volley, which the choices. Just before we announce it, Mark, who would your choice be?
Ooh, who would I go for? I'd probably go for Meinke, just because it's Meinke, to be honest. Yeah, because he has been a bit of a cult hero / comedy villain on the show, really, this year, hasn't he? So I'm going to go for him. I do love a kind of cult hero to win this kind of award.
Yeah, fair play. No, good choice. Well, it was more or less a landslide for Union Berlin, who got 60% of our vote. So, yeah, congrats to them. Lots of love for the Berlin club getting their season back on track, which we were talking about earlier. You know, it's great to see them going back to what, you know, has made them so very tricky to play against in recent seasons. So, yeah, 60% of the vote. Well done, Union. We look forward to having more of your votes on this particular section. Let us know what you think about it. Do you agree? If there are any other comments, I think there was a comment on Twitter earlier on saying that Yanis Blaswicz should be a candidate, but that was from the RB Leipzig guys podcast. So I'm fairly sure that was a relatively biased opinion, but he did play well. But yeah, excellent performances from individuals and players this week. And that's a lovely place to finish off, I reckon, this week. And I've got to run down the road in a minute to football, hence why I'm dressed for the occasion, as you can see on YouTube, which you can't see on podcasts. But anyway, I'll hand over to yourself, Mark, for the closing of the show.
Yeah, so if you enjoyed what you saw today, then check out @OverTheBar FB and @OverTheBar Extra. Also follow Rory at Village Footy 20. And then, yeah, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. But yeah, we've got a lot more coming for you as well before the end of the Hinrunde, which will end after 16 rounds this year. But yeah, we've got this weekend, which will be the last weekend. And then we've got the kind of odd situation of like a midweek set of fixtures to end the Hinrunde, haven't we? So maybe we'll do a watch along for that as well. We'll have to think about that, Rory, as well. But yeah, thanks for checking in with the show again this week. And we'll see you on Thursday for the predictions for this weekend. So see you then, guys.